Hello and welcome. I have another spooky story for you today. This story was recommended to me by my friend Jetstorm. They found this story on the subreddit r/scary stories. The story is linked in the description below if you would like to read it yourself. And without further ado, here is Never Look Out the Window at Night. I was awoken by the sound of rain pattering against my window. My eyes slowly stretched open, darkness consuming my vision as I stared up at the pitch black ceiling. A flash brightened my room for a second, revealing every inch hidden behind the blanket of black. I rolled my head around, eyes darting to the window beside my bed. I could only see the sky, dark like my room, apart from the occasional flash. It took me a minute to wake up and realize what I was doing. When I did, I quickly tossed my head to the other side of my pillow. I was now facing the wall. Panic slowly started to rise in my chest. My heart thumped loudly, even louder than the thunder. I squinted my eyes shut, my breathing heavy and strained. I had looked out the window. Now you might be wondering why this is such a bad thing. Ever since I was small, I was told by almost everyone not to look out the window at night. Whenever I would ask why, I would receive a dull response. Something bad will happen was the usual answer. I wasn't the only person raised with this rule. Every kid in my class was told the same thing, and all of us were equally confused by it. I figured it was some stupid ploy my town had thought up to keep kids from staying up late. That was until last year, when Brody heathens looked out the window one night. Brody thought the story was nothing but horse shit, and he was determined to prove so. He told the entire school that he would look out his window that night and tell us what happened the next morning. We were all so excited, thinking that Brody was so brave, going against our communal rule. I was excited to be at school in the morning. I couldn't wait for Brody to arrive and report on what had happened. He was late that day. He came into class looking tired, pale, and sickly. At lunch, we all rushed to ask him what happened. He didn't say anything, only looked down at the pitiful ham sandwich in his hands. No matter how many times we asked or how loud we asked, he wouldn't answer. A few people were worried, but most brushed this off, thinking he was playing a joke. I didn't think he was joking. He looked genuinely affected. He was quiet that whole day, which was more than shocking, as Brody had always been a loudmouth who struggled to keep it down during lessons. I don't think he spoke a word the whole day. He didn't come to school the day after, or the day after that, or any day for that entire week. By now, everyone was concerned. On the second week of Brody not coming to school, we were all called into the assembly hall. There, the school confirmed that Brody had committed suicide and that there would be a ceremony for him in the gym during lunch. The school was silent that day. Only the muffled sobs of Brody's mourning friends filled the halls. We all knew that whatever he saw out the window that night must have driven him to this. People's curiosity refused to let them leave the topic alone. Suzanne Walters was next. She looked out her window one night and hung herself less than a week later. Then it was Jake Richmond. He looked out his window too and had shot himself in the head with his dad's rifle 3 days later. 3 deaths in 1 month. Everyone was terrified, and we all knew that something was causing them to do this. Something was torturing every person that looked out the window at night. I vowed I would never do it, but now I had. I lay silent in my bed. The sound of rain grows steadily louder. I waited for something to happen, but nothing did. After a few minutes of sweating and laying still as a statue, I rolled my head back out, peering back out to the sky. I started to calm down. It wasn't so scary. Dark, but not scary. A confident feeling rose in me. I'm not sure why or how this feeling began, but it was impossible to ignore. I lifted my head up from my mattress, my sheets sticking to my sweat-stained back. I poked my head over the side and looked out the window. There was nothing there. A few dim streetlights flicked in the darkness, and a flash of lightning would illuminate the street, revealing nothing but puddles of rain and blackened out houses resting peacefully beside the sidewalk. Stupid. I chuckled to myself, turning my head to flop back down into the comforter. But something caught my eye just as I moved my head. Something was sitting in the corner of my room. I felt my heart freeze and stop. It was still pitch black in my room, so I couldn't tell what it was, but it looked like a person. They sat on the floor, knees pulled up into their chest, hands clutching their legs as their head was bowed low, face hidden behind their thighs. I couldn't look away from the figure, convinced if I did, it would jump up and rush me. I couldn't move, terrified that if I did, the figure would notice me. Slowly, the figure began to raise its head, bright orange eyes peering at me through the thick darkness. A cracking sound followed in pursuit. The figure rose to its feet. Once it stood up fully, it was up to my ceiling. I didn't know what to do at that moment. I slowly inched my head towards my pillow, gently resting it against the fabric. I rolled over, slow as a snail, so I was facing my wall. The whole time, the figure stayed still, just watching me with its beady orange eyes. I shut my eyes as tight as I possibly could. I couldn't stop the waterfall of tears from dripping down my face. Although I did my best to be as quiet as possible, apart from the occasional loud sniffle. I'm not sure how, but I fell asleep. I woke up the next day. The sun beamed into my room, and the figure was gone. I jumped out of bed, ran downstairs. My parents were sitting in the dining room, and behind them stood the figure. I could see it fully now. Its skin was dry, muted gray, and it had two little slits in its face for nostrils. Wispy tufts of hair crept out from its scaly scalp. It had a long, skinny body. I could see its ribs poking out of its stomach. It had short, stubby, almost dinosaur-like arms, with nails as long and sharp as knives protruding from its fingers. Its orange eyes glared at me, while it smiled, big and commercially white teeth poking out from its gray, trapped lips. Mom? I muttered, baffled at how my parents couldn't see the figure looming behind them. Yes, sweetie, she answered in a chipper, unbothered voice. What's up, bud? Asked my dad. The figure cracked its neck down, so its head was looking down at my father, eyes rolled up to the edges of its eyelids, gazing at me. You're looking quite pale, my dad said, worried. I wondered if I should tell them. It was obvious they couldn't see it. I choked down my fear and spoke with a hoarse voice. I'm fine, just tired, I said. I sat down at the table. The thing looked at me the entire time I ate. It followed me to school, diving behind cars and trees every time I tried to look at it. I sat down in class. The thing was standing in the back of the class, just watching me. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. Its eyes felt like they were stabbing me. My friend Dave sat down next to me at lunch. "Dude, are you okay? You've been quiet today," he said. I looked up at him. The creature was standing behind him, waving its knife-like fingers around in a strange pattern. Was this the thing that Brody had seen? The thing that drove him to kill himself? I knew it would try to do the same to me, but I wouldn't let it. I looked out my window last night. Dave went pale. There's a creature following me now. No one can see it but me. I think it drives you to take your own life. I'm not sure why, but it won't do that to me. I looked up at the creature. It was now snarling at me. I reached for its hand and clapped it down on Dave's head. I watched Dave freeze, and his eyes slowly rolled to the back of his head. Blood pouring from them, along with his ears and mouth. I jumped to my feet, a nauseous pit rising in my stomach. Dave fell to the ground, staining the grass with cherry red blood. "Dave!" I shouted. "What?" His voice came from behind me. I turned. Dave was just standing right there, alive. But he was also lying on the floor, dead. I felt dizzy. I couldn't keep my head straight. My head throbbed as I tumbled to the floor and blacked out. When I woke up, I was in a dark room. There was nothing in the room but a bed. The creature was lying on top of me, face inches away from mine. I wanted to scream, but nothing would leave my mouth. Slowly, the creature bent down, drool spilling onto my face and into my mouth, choking me. He opened his jaw wide, his jagged white teeth ready to rip me to shreds. "Alex!" I opened my eyes. I was lying in a hospital bed, bandages wrapped around my temple, and an IV pumping fluid into my body. My mother was sitting beside me, clutching my wrist. "You're awake. You're finally awake," she cried. What my dad said next made my blood run cold. "Why would you drink that rat poison? What were you trying to do? Kill yourself?" I looked up at the small window of the hospital room door. The creature stood there, grinning as its glowing orange eyes pierced right through me.
I hope you enjoyed that story. There's a link to the story in the description below if you would like to read it yourself. I hope to post more spooky stories this month, so please subscribe and like if you enjoyed it. So long.